Hey up, Front Row Racing DP here, on my, I think, 4th day now of live streaming. It's not 4th in total, it's just I'm trying to make sure I do a live stream once a day for this week. And okay, we're only on Wednesday, but I started on like Saturday or something like that, so it might be the 5th day. Although I am going to have a little bit of a Twitch rant. Twitch has got some major issues. The idea, the concept, great. Live stream, broadcast, transfer to YouTube, fantastic. But why is it that every live stream that I do that is over 2 hours, the first 2 hours are fine, the rest of it gets corrupted? Meaning, when I do 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hour live streams, it's all ruined. You get the first 2 hours, which leads on to the next 4, and you don't get to watch the next 4. So I'm in a situation now where I've got to time limit myself to maximum 2 hour videos so that I can export them onto YouTube, hopefully no problems. Now I know I'm not the only one that's having this issue, and I know this is an issue that's been going on for a long time, and I've even emailed Twitch about it and spoke to them about it, and they've explained what it is. Twitch records in 30-minute chunks, and sometimes the chunk gets corrupted. But why can't I just export the video from Twitch onto my PC? If I could do that, I could edit it, trim it, do the works, do everything that I'm good at with editing videos, but no, I can't do that. So annoyingly, I've done a live stream every day since Saturday, and out of all of those videos, so that's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right, because we're on Wednesday, so that is the 4th. Out of 4 live streams that we've done, 3 of them are corrupted. So that is a waste to a degree of 3 days. Now for those people that have watched the videos, like watched me doing it live, it's not a waste because they've got to watch it. But for those people that may have come on late or wanted to see what happened early on, they can't watch it on YouTube because it's bloody corrupted. Slim Dingo, good evening. Right, okay, so I am going to have to set my alarm because Twitch is being redonkulous. I'm going to have to set my alarm for about an hour and 50 minutes. So let me quickly sort that out. So 17:54, knock 10 minutes off, 17:44, and add an hour on. So that should take us to 18:44, that'd be an hour. So actually 18:54 would be an hour. Add 40 minutes on. So turn 20, 30, 40, so 19:34, that's an hour and 40 minutes. So that is going to be my time limit for this live stream, depending on how hot I get. It depends on whether I start up a new one. Now for people that are viewing, it may get really frustrating for you that I'm going to do it this way and that you have to come and find me for the next live stream, but at the moment it's the only way that I can get Twitch to export my videos without an issue. And it's something that I do need to test, because when it comes to doing the Front Row Racing F1 League, where for one of the divisions I will be recording and doing commentary, I need to know that it's going to export to YouTube okay. Now the races on average take 45-55 minutes, out of 15 minutes qualifying, and then you got sort of half hour, 40 minutes to play with. But I need to make sure it works. Slim Dingo, do you have tune tutorial on YouTube? Don't know. Now if it's something to do with the music, and I've seen a few different comments on the Twitch help pages, I've been all over them, even posted my own stuff, and annoyingly I've got a bit of conspiracy theory, and that is that I think that if you become a Twitch Turbo member paying £9 a month or $9 a month, you don't have that problem. So I've actually posted up on Twitch the question, Turbo, do you have problems exporting to YouTube? In the hope that people, that at least if one person comes on and says, I use Turbo and I can't export videos, okay, that conspiracy theory is quashed. However, if loads of them come on and say, I've got Turbo, never had an issue, then that's what it is. And if that is what it is, then Twitch, you're being very, very sneaky there, because you're giving, it's not even an extra service, it would be you're not giving a service unless you pay for it, which is wrong, because if that's the case you should advertise it that way. But anyway, I do also have to make an apology. It was pointed out to me last night that when I sign off, I say goodbye about 4 times, so it's not too bad. But when I sign off and I actually stop the broadcast, it does stop the broadcast for you dead. So, and there is about a 30-second delay. So there may have been occasions where people have been watching my live stream and it's been cut off abruptly. I apologise for that one. I'm still kind of new to Twitch. So what I will try and do, if I remember, is I will say my goodbyes. I will give it about 30 seconds to a minute before I actually tell it to stop broadcasting, and then we'll get the complete goodbye. So I will work on that one. Anyway, this live stream, taming the Ford Mark IV. Now, this is a car that I did drive a few days ago. I thought it'd be brilliant, and it was horrible. So I was like, right, okay, that's a car that I am going to have to do a bit of work on. So that's exactly what we're going to do. It's not going to be in new road cars. I'm just having a quick flick through them. Is it going to be in Tourings? I would guess it's going to be in GTs. It is. Yeah, so the Ford Mark IV, like I said, I drove it and it was horrible. I even stitched up a few of my friends in an online lobby. So right, let's go drive this. And they saw it and was, oh yeah, come on. And most of us were spinning. Those who had assists on were lapping everybody else. So this is a car that, for me, it needs some work regarding a setup. So that's what we're going to do here. So we've got a maximum 2 hours to see if we can get some kind of setup on this car that allows us to turn it into a race car rather than a spinning wheel. Now, as for a track, I actually haven't decided yet. What I want is I'm going to want a track that's got some fast corners, some slow corners, some tight corners, some mid-speed corners. Now I could go with Silverstone, but that is quite a long track. But you know what? We will. No, let's not. Let's go to Circuit de Catalunya. Now the reason I've picked that is a couple of reasons. One, we drove on the short circuit here and the car was terrible. And two, this is where F1 cars do tend to do a lot of practice because of the nature of the corners. Low speed, high speed, mid speed, it's got them all. Bumps, humps, lady lumps, and all that lot. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to touch the setup. I'll have a quick flick through, see what's what. I will take the fuel out of it though. We'll have a quick look at the setup just to see what it is set at, see if there is anything that we could possibly change, and we're going to go on track just so that I can show just how bad this car really is. And then we'll look at working on setup to try and get this car handling. Okay, so quick butchers at the setup. Now with me restricting myself, well, there's only one type of tyre, restricting myself to 2 hours, we may find it's not long enough to get a setup on this car. But I'm not going for world record lap times. I am simply just wanting to try and make the car drivable rather than spinning around a lot. Okay, so quick look at these setups. Not much you can do on the aeros. Pressures are quite low anyway. Brake ducts are wide open. There we go. Right, expect to see some spinning. I'll tell you what as well, it was hot here yesterday. Today, even hotter. the weather today is the kind of weather where if an ice cream van comes round, I may have to disappear, go and jump through the hatch, strip off, and just sit in the ice cream fridge that they have, the freezer that they have. Either that or buy a load of ice creams and just shove them down my shorts, because it is so hot. It is ridiculous. Right, now I am taking it kind of easy while I'll try and get the tyres warmed up, but I know how bad this car is. So I know that it is just going to spin on most corners, most of the time. So whereabouts are you then, Slim Dingo? Now I do know that with this car, as soon as I'm down into first gear, any kind of accelerating and it is just wanting to spin out, which is one of the reasons why I have picked this track, because there are corners where I'm going to want to or need to use first gear, and if it's spinning out on me every time I use first gear, then it's no good. I'm nowhere near full throttle, because I know what will happen if I do go full throttle. It'll do that, or worse. And the brakes on this aren't particularly very good. I'm going to try and do a lap, then I'm going to pop up the telemetry just so I can see what's going on. So even when you think you got the braking point right, it just will not turn in. And then when you try and get going again, it does just want to spin. And as standard, this isn't really a car that you can just steer from the rear, because if you try, it will just spin out. I mean, okay, I am steering it a little bit from the rear, but if I try pushing at all, it will just lose it. I'm actually making this look not too bad at the moment, but that is because I am taking it fairly easy. Tiniest bit of throttle and away she goes. I mean, that wasn't even a big throttle then, or big acceleration. It was just a tiny amount. Now we could try increasing the rear downforce straight away to help the rear end, however, that is a setup change that I did try on it in the online lobby, and it made no difference. Manchester, eh? Oh. Little more entry speed. Good luck with that one, Spider King. Have a bit of faith, trust me, I do know what I'm doing. This car can't handle more entry speed, not with assists off. You try more entry speed and it will just spin or understeer way off. That's why we are in here. to have a play about with the setups. Right, okay, I'm just going to pop the telemetry up so I can, at different points, have a spy on the temperatures. So we can tell that the front end definitely needs some work to try and get the steering to come in for us. But to be honest, one of the first things I'm going to do is look at the ride height. And then after that I shall have a quick butcher's at tyre pressures, cambers and so on. Okay, front right's not getting worked anywhere near as much as the right side tyre's not getting worked anywhere near as much as the left. Am I getting anywhere near topping out? Ooh, it won't hack that. Right, okay. So, with the right side tyres not getting the same sort of temperature, we can have a look at lowering the tyre pressure. But what I want to do to start off with, I'm going to try doing it one change at a time, and that is the ride heights. Now with the old cars, they do tend to be sat quite high anyway, so I'm going to take a big jump here of 15 mil and see how we get on with that. How can I tell that? How can I tell what? That it needs work on the front end because it's got excuse me, because I've got major understeer. And if you mean how can I tell that Spider, thanks for the comments, but at the moment I have a process of how I'm going to work on my setup, so that's where I shall stick to it. I am time limited. I've set a time limit on this because of how Twitch is playing about, but already on the cold tyres, just lowering that ride height has helped with that front end. At least it did around turns 1 and 2. So let the tyres get up to temperature and see how she handles. Cold tyres, not going to slow down. Okay, the tyres have warmed up a little bit quicker because on the lower ride height they are going to get worked a little bit more. But if I go pushing it too much, it still won't make the corners. Now, one of the reasons that I've reduced the ride height first is so that straight away you can find out whether the car can handle the bumps, the curbs at this level of ride height, and whether it does aid with the amount of grip on the front and rear, which it does. Obviously you go too low on the ride height, you're not going to handle the bumps or the curbs, but these old cars, they do tend to be sat quite high anyway. Still a little bit understeery, but we do know that the tyre temperatures aren't balanced, and if they're not balanced, they're not going to be working very well together. But we'll get around to sorting it all out. Like I said, I am just going to do the one change at a time. Because it is something that I do say that people should do. If you're going to play about with the setups, do one change at a time, then you can work out what change or what effect that change has had. But as I've got more into playing about with the setups on here, depending on which type of live stream I do, I have quite often done sort of 2 or 3 setup changes just to save time. But if you are specifically trying to set a car up, doing them one at a time is the better way. We're locking up a little bit too much, and that's not with a lot of brake pressure applied by myself either. Now it is handling better, still nowhere near perfect. The thing is, as the car grips up a little more with the setup changes you may make, the temptation is to push it a little more, which then leads to going off. Front end definitely still not gripping up enough, but it is feeling a bit better. Now I'm not going to lower the ride height anymore. I could try it, but I'm not going to bother. I'm going to move on to the next area. Too much steering angle, trying to compensate for the extra little bit of understeer there. Too much steering angle with too much throttle will send you in a spin. Okay, so I'm just going to do another lap, maybe 2, just trying to keep an eye on the front tyre temperatures. Too busy looking at the temperatures then to make the apex. Okay, so at the moment the right front has been running around about 5 degrees lower than the left. She's sliding. Okay, careful on the exit. Now obviously the car is still nowhere near being able to really be pushed, because the grip just isn't there, but that is obviously what we are aiming to get towards. Right, okay, let's go and have a look at these tyre pressures. Now the right sided ones are definitely running at a lower temperature, so I'm going to knock these down by 10. Quite a big jump, but let's go and do a few laps and see what effect that'll have. Which car am I driving? This is the Ford Mark IV. Spider, I wasn't taking offence, it's just this car on the standard setup is absolutely shocking, and the point of this live stream is taking the car from absolutely shocking to drivable. Now on the standard setup around here, I know this because I've done a fair few laps around here, if you try going faster into the corners it will just spin. Now with the little setup changes that I'm making, it will allow us to go faster and faster once we get there. But I'm just taking my time. I've done plenty of setup works on the cars, on quite a few of the cars. I do kind of have some kind of idea of what I am doing, but I'm doing it in this process for a purpose. I don't mind people commenting, making suggestions or anything like that, but for this particular live stream I've come in with an action plan, so that is what I shall stick to. If I get to a point where I say, right, okay, feel free to offer any other setup suggestions, feel free to offer them, but at the moment I'm going to stick to my action plan. Now it is going to take another lap or so to really get the tyres up to temperature, so although the tyres are green, they're not sort of in the 170s, 180s, 190s that they were running at after 3 or 4 laps. And once I've got the tyre temperatures feeling a little more balanced, my next section will be to avoid the pit lane and have a look at the cambers. Now one of the reasons that I have an action plan for how I'm going about setting, for example, this particular car up is there's going to be a lot of people that don't know a lot about setting cars up, want to just pick up and play, but if they try that with this car they're not really going to get anywhere unless they have got the assists on. And that's not just me saying it. I mean, I race with some fairly damn quick people, and when I chucked them all in this car as a surprise, all the good drivers with no assists on were spinning it around all over the place, and all of those with assists on found it quite a nice car to drive. And that's obviously because you can hit it hard on the brakes and not lock it up, you can hit it hard on the throttle and not get the wheel spin, and you're not going to spin it with the anti-spin on. I'll tell you what, I think at this moment in time, I think I'm hotter than the bloody tyres are. It's so ridiculously hot here. I am just taking it easy for the moment. I do just want to give the tyres plenty of time to warm up, and as they warm up it gives me a chance to feel what I am feeling through the wheel, work out what it's trying to tell me. Look at this moment in time, it's saying, Dave, get yourself an ice cream, get me one as well. Slightly too much brake there, and she locked up, even eased off, went back on a little bit, she locks up again. So we are going to have a look at the brakes, because we don't want it locking up into the corners. Okay, so at the end of the lap at least, looking at the tyre temperatures, they are now a little closer to being levelled out. They were just before that corner. Obviously, right side is now cooling quite a lot. Okay, still struggling a bit on the steering. It's definitely handling better than it was at the start. It can't really handle any kind of heavy braking at the moment, but we'll get around to that. At least it's not trying to spin out on me under braking. At least not yet, because I can't take it too hard in the braking, because if I do, it's locking up. really hard. I think I may have to look at doing the brakes before I look at doing the cambers, to be honest. See if we can get the brakes working right. Oh, the temperatures still aren't ideal for how I want it, so I'm going to try doing 2 changes here. I could do it with a towel actually. I'm going to knock some pressure off the front, and I'm not going to knock another 10, so off the front, off the left, and knock another 10 off the right, so we'll see what difference that has to the temperatures. Now for the brakes, I'm just going to knock a little bit of pressure off it to see if that's going to stop it from locking up with the amount of braking I'm already using. Dave Hart, that's a shame, mate. Who's meant to be delivering it? Do I want to do some racing tonight? To be honest, the reason I'm on as early as I am is because I probably won't be doing any racing tonight. It is so damn hot that I'm only planning on doing a short run on this and then finding myself an ice cube maker. Now the reason I've gone to doing the brakes before I go doing the camber, because I was going to do the camber first, is that if your brakes aren't right, it's not going to allow you to be at the right sort of speed for the corners, which means it doesn't really matter what your camber's at, your car's going to be going too fast, or if it's the other way around, too slow. Now I'm going to have to take it easy again for a moment while I get the tyres up to temperature. But with as low as we've gone with the pressures, they should come up to temperature faster. Now one of the difficulties there is of reducing the brake pressure, or if you're using a wheel and pedals, is you do a lot of your driving on muscle memory, so the amount you brake, accelerate is all done on muscle memory, so your foot will sort of brake to a certain amount and you have to adjust it per car. So if you do reduce your brake pressure, you may find that if you brake the same amount, yes, the car doesn't lock up, but you don't make the corner either, and that's because you need to go that bit further on the brake pedal where it still won't lock up, but it'll slow the car down. We've got a little bit of locking then, but the tyres are still cold, so I'm not surprised by that. But I actually was able to apply more brake pressure, get the car slowed down quicker. Oh, bloody AstroTurf. That was going quite well up until that point. Excuse me. See, much harder on the braking, less locking. It is going to allow me to get the turning point better. The front end still does need a little bit of work, but we did put that back a step to get the brakes done. That's not really the ideal line I want to use around that corner, but I'm not too worried about that for the moment. It's more just about how the car is feeling with the changes that we make. I made a downshift there thinking I was in third. I wasn't, I was in second. Now when it comes to adjusting the front end to try and get a bit more grip out of the steering, it's a little bit of a tricky one really, because put more camber on, it may help on turn in, but the way this car is at the moment, if it steers a little bit too much, it's going to lose the rear end. So what I may have to do with the camber is play about with it quite a bit. Perhaps add more camber, see how we get on, and then we may have to reduce it. Now, I'm not going for absolutely amazing world-class setup here. It's more a sort of, right, okay, let's just make this car drivable, and then in the future from there we can have a look at taking it to more of a higher level of setup. See, that's one of the corners the front end is really struggling on. Now I could just try getting around it with driving style, slowing down a little more, but I don't really want to do that. I want it to turn in. I was looking at the temperatures there, and the telemetry screen is great, apart from when you're looking at it when you're halfway around the corner. Right. Okay, I'm going to do one more lap with this as it is at the moment. But I am going to try and keep another eye on the temperatures. So I haven't been doing that, I've just been more focusing on how the car is handling. And now I'm going to try and look at the temperatures. So as we approach this first corner, the fronts are about the same temperature as are the rears. So that's not too bad, but because I was looking at that, we missed the bloody corner. See, what would be good is if in practice you could return to the pits and watch your practice session with the telemetry on as an in-game feature. Because if I sit here trying to drive while looking at the exact numbers of the temperatures, it does get quite tricky. As personally, I prefer less on the screen, less to put you off, or put me off. Okay, so far the temperatures aren't doing too bad really. Obviously they are fluctuating corner to corner, but overall they're kind of pretty much leveling themselves out. Now we could try getting them up to a higher temperature, but at the moment I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to see if I can get the front end to grip up a little more with some mechanical setup. And the rear end. Okay, wheel, don't spaz out on me. Right, I'm gonna have to take a moment, get myself a drink. Whew, it's so I know I've said it a few times, but it is really, really ridiculously hot here. Now I have got my window open today, so I've got to make sure I don't swear too much, otherwise I'll get told off from the neighbours while their kids are out in the garden playing. Right, quick catch up on UPS. Oh, see, now if they'd have used parcel line, you'd probably have it by now. Oh, you're doing career mode. Drift. I've got plenty of faster cars than that on here. The reason I'm in this car is because I jumped in it the other day, and on the standard setup it was one of the worst handling cars. It was up there with the Lotus 49. Now we've got the Lotus 49 handling quite nice around Le Mans yesterday, but it's time for the Ford Mark IV today. I can imagine on a H shifter this would be quite a lot of fun, because if I did have a H shifter I would be forced to use it, because the cars that haven't got a flappy paddle you have to use the H shifter, so I'm told anyway. 8:30, it was still in France. Bloody hell, that's a bit poor. Yeah, if you can heel and toe, that does make a big difference. It's one of the reasons why yesterday I was saying that they should bring back manual shifters with a manual, like a pedal clutch in F1 personally. Mad Scouse, how are you? I am going to be adjusting camber, yes, that's what I'm going to look at the next. Hi Cheesecake, hello. Looks like you're enjoying yourself. I don't know about enjoying myself, because I'm sweating so much. Now Glock, I may drop the tyre pressure a little bit more, but I do want to play about with the camber just to show what that is going to do. I have seen that the temperatures are level across the board. I just want to see if I can get it to give me a little bit more steering. Now you see, I have a theory, not a theory, but with a camber that's already this low at the moment, adding a little bit of camber should give us a little bit of steering, but you don't know how the car's going to handle until you actually do it. Now we could adjust the toe in and toe out, but I'm not going to do that at this moment in time. And someone asked about what's the diff set to. Now the diff, we haven't touched that yet because I'm taking my time with this. Oh, excuse me. Now under braking and I mean this limited slip acceleration lock, we may have to have a look at that one. The limited slip deceleration lock, that one's actually alright. I'm having no problem under braking with how the car is handling, other than when it was locking up the tyres a little bit. Bloody hell, so it was in France on Monday. Yeah, it should be there by today. Hopefully it'll excuse me, hopefully it'll be there by tomorrow. I do know quite a few parcel services do, especially around me, they deliver quite late, because that's when they know people are more likely to be in. So you never know, you may get a knock on the door as soon as you go to the loop. Right, so we've got to give these tyres a chance to warm up again. Now, where Glock has said about don't adjust the camber because the tyre pressures are quite equal, I fully get what he's saying, and to a degree agree with him, but at the same time, I mean, for example, take F1 cars. When you get to watch the F1 cars going around that have got the thermal imaging on the tyres, they don't have the same temperature all the way across the board, because obviously going around a corner, the outside edge of the tyre really should be working, well, not should be, that's where most of the pressure will be going. So for me personally, having a slightly warmer outside edge of a tyre isn't really a problem, because especially on a track like this where there's a lot of corners, the nature is that the outside of the tyre is going to get worked that little bit more. So for me it'll be on feel. If with this particular camber setting it feels like it steers better, if we can cope with the temperatures, then it'll work. But there's no guarantee that the camber setting we've put it to will work, because it is just a right, let's knock it down by 5. But I am sort of approaching it in a sort of pick up and play kind of manner, trying to just show a basic way of doing it. For people that have seen my other live streams, you'll know that I on occasion I have sat there and gone, right, okay, let's move this by 1 and move this by 1. I was way too late on the brakes there because I was talking and wagging my finger around. Now for the rear tyres, there is more chance of the inside edge being worked more, because that's going to be on the contact patch for longer of the time. Oh, don't look at the temperatures, Dave, while you're in mid-corner. Otherwise you'll be looking at them plummet while you're dragging the car out of the gravel. Now when it does come to setups, obviously people are different as to how they set cars up, and all you got to do is think about when Eddie Irvine was talking to Sky Sports on their Legends programme about being teammates with Michael Schumacher, said couldn't set up a car to save his life, but it didn't really matter because he'd always drive every car really, really fast. I was not willing to get off the throttle then, but I've got to now. Taking that entry a little too quick. Not enough on the brakes. Should have really gone for a short shift before that corner. I held quite a bit down in that first sector, but that's because I tried taking the first couple of corners in first gear just to see what it was like. Now for the sound of the revs it's not too bad, but for overall speed is better in second gear. Oh, knocked it up a little bit, got on the curb, then semi on the grass, and away she goes. Well, let's get rid of that gravel. Oh, come on, you can handle curbs better than this, Mr. Ford. Well, I'm going to take the telemetry screen off so I can concentrate a little more on the road itself. Oh, too tight. Come on, off the curb. Not a bad lap that. And I still do need to get a little more grip in the car, but we'll get that. Let's catch up with some of these messages. Check the shed. Don't have a shed. Probably delivered it next door. Can we see outside view? I will pop it on the warm-up. So that you can see which car it is. So I'll have a quick look through the setup. Now the brake mapping, that's an interesting one, because that could differentiate how much automatic acceleration there is while you're still on the braking. I'm not going to play about with that for the moment, or the gears. Let's have a quick look. Limited slip acceleration lock. I'll read what it says here. High settings here give the car better traction coming out of the corners, but limit your ability to turn. Lower settings reverse this, making it easier to turn with the possibility of wheel spin on exit of corners. Now we are getting a little bit of wheel spin on the exit of corners, but I'm not surprised with that. The problem is if I move this to a higher percentage, we may get less wheel spin, but we're going to struggle in the corners to get it turned in. I don't want it to struggle in the corners. So for the moment, I'm going to leave that. No, actually, no. Let's change it. I'm going to make a bigger change than what I ideally would. I'm going to bump it up by 20. So bumping it up by essentially 50%, and we'll see how it handles the corners. As for which car it is, it's this one, the Ford Mark IV. Now, I will do a little bit of the warm-up on this view, but I'm not going to try doing more, warm tyre laps on this view, because for me personally, this view just completely detaches me from what is actually happening with the car. If I was on a controller, it probably wouldn't make any difference. But for me, I mean, these kind of views, they take any racing game, regardless of how good it is, but especially if it is a good one, from being visually a fantastic racing game to taking me back to the days of playing Outrun or arcade games. There's just no connection between myself, my wheel, the car and the track. Don't want to get on the grass. It's got the tyres start to warm up though. See, because on this view I'm not really getting any sense of what the car's actually doing, although the sensations through the wheel may be the same. The visual effects that are happening on the car are just not there. And it does make me laugh as well when people say they want more and more realistic games and then they play on this view. So I don't think I've ever seen a helicopter flying this fast, this low, behind a race car on a track. Okay, let's go back to me in-car view. Oh, excuse me. Now for turning, that actually didn't feel too bad then, you know. A little bit of understeer there, but I should have had an ease off anyway. Come on, don't want to be on that. Ooh, just had a big glitch then. Now it's interesting because it said that limited slip differential lock, so decelerate. Well, whichever one it was, we just changed. It said it would hurt us in the corners, which I expected it to give us a lazier, slower turning. But what it actually seems to have done is given us a little bit more of a perkier turning, which for most of the corners is quite nice. But on the odd one or two, I've just got to make sure that I don't steer as much. We're still going to need to do something with the rear end of the car. Need to be able to make it into a really, really racy race car. You need to be able to get the power down. But then this is an extremely old race car where aerodynamics, even the mechanics, they may have been top of the range in their day, but compared to what we're used to now, they're shocking. So the front end seems to be feeling a little bit better. We need to work on that rear. Because if every time you're putting the throttle down, you're having to opposite lock it, although it may be fun, it's not going to be fast. Not unless you are actually in a drift competition. Now it could be that the the setting we've just changed is perhaps helping the front end in the corners, and it's not helping the rear end in the corners. Not helped us through there though. But obviously one of the things it did say about the setting we've changed is that moving it one way cause it more oversteer, move it the other way and it should reduce it. Now the way we've moved it should have reduced the oversteer, but it could be a situation of, because the front end actually feels like it's handling better, the rear end just can't keep up. It really does not like that curb. I do know, I mean, even on F1 games, that curb, you get slightly too much on it, slightly too much steering and slightly too much throttle, you will just spin it around. But obviously one of the things I haven't changed yet, which is usually one of the early things that I would change, is the excuse me, level of aerodynamics. So what I am actually thinking of doing now is, remembering that we have just made this setup change recently, I am not going to just leave that as it is, because I'm not overly convinced with it. What I am going to do is I'm just going to go and add a little bit of rear downforce, just to see if it now will balance out the rear end a bit with this particular setting. The thing is, although with the setting change we have just made, it actually doesn't feel too bad in the corners, but I am after having to make a lot of steering adjustments mid-corner. I don't really want to be doing that. I appreciate it's an old car, but still, I don't want to be doing that. The way I like to drive is turn in once, pretty much hold it around the corner and get off the steering once. But obviously different cars handle differently, and that is in an ideal world, because if you're slightly offline you may have to steer more, or if you're too tight, steer less, and so on. It's really not liking low speed acceleration now, which is an issue that I wasn't having before I made that change. Right, okay, let's go and whack a couple of degrees of aerodynamics on. Cortina. Cortina probably handles better as standard. Now with the tyres being cold, the changes were made are not going to take a huge effect. So what my plan now is just to see how this handles now with the additional rear downforce, and then I'm going to go back to that deceleration lock and reduce it from 60% down to 20%, so we take it 50% the other way, just so we can show what kind of difference that may or may not have. Come on, off the curb. Well, straight into a faster lap. Most of that time was gained in the final sector. But already with the changes that we've made, we have taken the car from being an absolute pig to a pig in blanket. It is more drivable. It's still not perfect to completely thrash it, but I did say we're not going to go into a massive full-on detailed setup of this. It's more a case of let's just take it from being horrible to drive to being drivable. Right, okay, so let's go and see how it handles. Excuse me, if we take this down, because it was on 40, so let's take it the opposite way to 20. Well, I'll quickly grab a drink and have a bit of a smoke. We'll recap on it that it does say high settings here give the car better traction coming out of the corners. Maybe. I wouldn't say really limited my ability to turn. It increased how much steering action I was having to make mid-corner to keep it around the corner. But going this way, it should give the car much more wheel spin, but potentially improve the steering. So we'll see how it feels. Interesting comment there. Right, okay, let's quickly catch up with some of these messages. I would adjust this much as you need to use accelerator to turn this car to beat the understeer. I haven't got a problem using the accelerator to steer to get around the understeer. The problem is, especially with this car, especially on its standard settings, you use that millimetre too much throttle and the pedal. Which is why it's such a pain in the backside. So about 4 Cortina on the Sweetie. Laura Nico, how are you today? Hello? It was next to a Boris Marina. Yes, I owned one at some point. I'm not even going to comment on the cars I've owned. I adjusted acceleration to high setting and lost more traction. I can kind of imagine that, but if you're on a controller, you've got a lot less acceleration travel than I have on a pedal, so it could have that effect. How is the temps? The temps were alright from the start. We're ignoring those for the moment. I've got them to a level that I was kind of happy with. We could probably get more temperature through them, but I'm viewing this as it's quite an old car. They weren't made to run, they didn't make tyres to run at the same sort of temperatures the current F1 car would run, because these tyres would melt to the tarmac and you'd be running on rims, but that will go. Aero won't affect on slow corners though. Aero does have a lot less effect on the slow corners, however braking zones it helps, and acceleration zones it helps. Actually the first fast look better. Right, we're going to see how this setting feels. I've got a feeling this will be absolutely bloody horrible. You could be right there, Mad Scouse. Also, a setting that I may be happy with, someone else could go and use it and hate it. Or a setup that someone else may be happy with, I could try it and hate it. I mean, also, there is also that possibility that setups may behave differently for pad users compared to wheel users. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect by this, but let's say for example this corner up here, I turn it in, if I boot the throttle, away she goes, and I'm fighting to get the steering lock on. Now if you're on a controller, you don't have to fight to get the steering lock on, you just have to flick it to the left and you'll get full steering. So on a controller you may find that you can get away with with a car that's got a lot less aerodynamics, a lot less rear end grip. You can slide it around the corners, but when you're on a wheel it's not so easy to do. So like I say, for a pad user to get opposite lock, all they've got to do is flick their thumb a couple of millimetre, but for a wheel user to get the opposite lock, they've got to take off the amount of steering that is already on then apply additional steering in the opposite direction, all in the space of time that a pad user moves their thumb. Okay, so this this setting that we have just changed, it should give us better turning, more wheel spin. So let's see how we get on. Bag load of understeer there. There's the wheel spin. Got two wheels on that curb. It doesn't like slowing down on the curb. I would say I am having to, at the moment, apply more steering lock to make it get around the corners, but that could just be that I am driving it a little bit too fast. Again, quite a bit of understeer mid-corner. And again. I am trying to push it a bit at the moment to see how bad the rear end will be. So it could be a situation that it's understeering just because we are going too deep into the braking zones, carrying too much speed. At the end of the day, we do have to remember that we are in an old car. They're making that. Well, I will admit, I'm not enjoying this particular setting with how it's making the front end feel. We're definitely having to steer more to get it into an apex. chunk of understeer again. It will not steer. I feel like I'm having to go very, very, very slow to get it to turn in. Admittedly, it does say on the slower corners, so it could be that on the slower corners it's better, but on the medium to high speed it is struggling. Oh, that's a ridiculous amount of steering lock to try and get around that corner. And obviously you can only take your steering lock so far, and then you do just slide the tyres. Okay, got it slowed down more this time. It didn't get any understeer until the exit of the corner. I'm really not a big fan of how this is handling now. I mean, the rear end doesn't feel too bad, but the steering has gone horrible. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on to 50%. I preferred it more towards 60, but I think 60 may have been a little bit too much. So I'm going to go and put it on to 50%, because that was just, I won't say it was more difficult to drive, it just wasn't as nice to drive. The steering for me was just fairly damn excuse me, fairly damn horrible. Okay. Now that's an interesting one that I could have a play about with, but at the moment I'm not going to. Damn, it's so hot. I'm fairly sure it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter here at the moment. Okay, we may have to have a play with that one. Okay, limited slip preload. Adjust the amount of built-in lock before any acceleration or deceleration effects take place, as in a neutral throttle condition. Low settings here improve manoeuvrability, whilst high settings reduce it. Now you see, it may improve manoeuvrability, but what I want to do is improve... I just want more overall grip. Now, one way I could try and do that is to lower the ride height some more. I don't really want to do that, although I may do. Now, the bump stops, I've got these all at 0mm. So, quick read of what that says there for your guys' benefits. Increase the height sparingly to prevent bottoming out due to a low ride height or stiff spring settings. A taller bump stop will stiffen the ride and make it more responsive at the expense of some stability. Well, I don't want less stability, I want more stability. If the car is more responsive, it'll be more twitchy. So I'm actually going to leave that on zeros, because we're nowhere near bottoming out, which is what is leading me to think let's lower the ride height. Although what I want to actually change is, have a look at these sway bars. Now for the sway bars, increasing the stiffness can reduce body roll, but potentially can cause the wheels to lift off the ground during cornering. Well, obviously we don't want the wheels to lift off during cornering, so we have to be careful of that one. Set both the front and rear settings stiff for fast, smooth tracks and soft for tighter, bumpier locations. A stiffer setting at the front can cause understeer, whereas a softer setting can cause oversteer, and vice versa. Okay, so if I want less understeer and less oversteer, then the temptation would be to soften up the front to give it less understeer, and stiffen up the rear to give it less oversteer, if I've read that right. Okay, so let's soften up the front, take 10 off, and just make sure a stiffer setting at the front can cause understeer, whereas a softer setting can cause oversteer, and vice versa for the rear. Okay, reading that and vice versa for the rear would actually suggest that the softer the rear sway bar, the more understeer. The stiffer the rear sway bar, the more oversteer. But there's only one way to find out. Okay, it's already on CEFT at 17 Nm. So I'm going to change it. So someone might have to remember the 17. But I'm going to adjust it quite far towards the stiff, just to see if it gives us a shed load of oversteer. If it does, then obviously it's showing you that moving it that way is going to give us loads of oversteer, and we'll want to go softer than the 17. Now for the front, hopefully that change that we've made should just reduce any kind of understeer that we get in the car. It may not work, but we shall find out. So it is feeling a little more oversteering, but the tyres are cold, so let's wait until they warm up before we make any real judgment on that. Oh, sod off curb. It's too hot today to recover from spins all the time. Now on the outlap, as the tyres did start to warm up, it did still feel like it was quite oversteery, but it's going to take a couple of laps just to know for sure. But then there is the possibility that with some cars, setups may work slightly backwards. Excuse me, I'll turn that alarm off. Setups may work slightly backwards with some cars for how you prefer to drive them. So this car, where it's been suffering with oversteer for most of the session, it could have a slight backwards effect where giving it more oversteer may just balance it out more, allowing you to slide it around all the corners more. Now that alarm that was going off means that we are an hour and 40 minutes into this live stream, and for anyone that wasn't watching early on, I did say that I am going to keep the live stream to less than 2 hours, and the reason for that is Twitch is being an absolute pain in the backside at the moment. Any live streams that are over 2 hours, it is corrupting parts of the video files and only allowing me to upload the first 2 hours. Anything after that, it just won't let me create highlights, separate it or anything like that, and it's really annoyed me because over the last 4 days we've done quite a few live streams, on average between 4 and 6 hours long, and when converting it or exporting it to YouTube, it's just failing, saying that it can't export the video file type, which is a bit of a piss take really. But I have spoken to Twitch about it in the past, and their reason was kind of understandable, but gave no way of resolving it. From a user's point of view, it is down to Twitch and YouTube to sort out. So I'm going to keep the live streams under 2 hours, but then start up a new one, which may get a little frustrating, but at least it means that I can just export it straight over onto YouTube without any messing about. It also gives me a chance to see if it is going to error on any of the files that are under 2 hours, so that at some point I will do another longer one and see if again it errors on anything after 2 hours. Okay, this is definitely much more oversteering now. I mean, with that Twitch issue, I mean it's an issue that a hell of a lot of people have been excuse me, have been suffering with, and Twitch have just come up with no way of fixing it, which is really annoying. The simplest way they could fix it is to allow the Twitch user to export the video onto their own PC. Problem solved then, but they probably won't do that because there's probably some kind of monetary thing or contract that has to have the specific Twitch link, so that when you export it onto YouTube, it does say on there that you did it on Twitch. But personally, they could always just say, if you're going to do it on Twitch and export it to your PC, you have to mention that you did do it on Twitch, which if you're live streaming like this, then it's kind of obvious and you're probably going to say it anyway. Right, okay, now I've done a few setup changes there, but we're not finished with it because I don't like the way that the rear is handling there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to end this live stream and start up a new one in a couple of minutes time. So apologies if that's going to annoy you, but it's what I need to do at this moment in time. And we'll just have a quick catch up on some of these messages. See if there's anything. Okay. Am I on a wheel? Yes, one. I'm on a T300 RS. Yeah, most cars do struggle with the last corner on this track. You get on that curb and AstroTurf, it is tricky. Paul, more money than sense. To be honest, I did not want to pay the money for this wheel. I only spent 250 quid though, and it's the best 250 quid I've ever spent. Better than spending it in a strip club anyway. Lasts longer. I dial in the temp and camber. Well, I started off with the temp and camber. I'm ignoring them for a reason. I want to see how the rest of the car setup is feeling, and I can always go back and have a look at the temperatures. Glock, don't worry, I know what you do with your setups. Thank you for the true lesson. I bet I'll learn something on this. Maybe. Just had update it tomorrow now, which is good as I'm off work. Hopefully it does turn up tomorrow, Dave. Do I have to make Twitch need to sort their SHT out? Yes, you are correct. You are that silly guy from YouTube. There's a lot of silly guys on YouTube. It depends on which one you're on about. Anyway, right, okay, so I'm going to bring this live stream to an end. But I am going to leave the screen on for about 30-40 seconds to cover the delay, because if I just end it, it'll chop you all off. Right, I've been Front Row Racing DP. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you all soon, and we'll start a new live stream in a couple of minutes.